Somewhere tonight at 2:47 a.m., a woman will open her eyes, not from a nightmare, not from noise. She'll simply wake. She'll lie there, staring at the ceiling, convinced something is wrong with her. She'll reach for her phone. The blue light will fill her face like a small, private sun. She'll scroll, and by morning, she'll have forgotten it happened. She has no idea she just did something ancient. For most of human history, not centuries, not millennia, but hundreds of thousands of years, waking in the middle of the night was not a disorder. It was the design. We've been taught that healthy sleep means 8 uninterrupted hours. A solid block, lights off at 10, alarm at 6. Anything else is dysfunction. A problem to solve, a pill to take. That model is barely 200 years old. Before gas lamps, before electricity, before the industrial clock carved the night into a single, rigid performance, humans slept differently. Not slightly differently, radically differently. And what they did in the dark hours between sleeps may be one of the most important forgotten chapters in the story of human consciousness. In the early 1990s, a historian named Roger Eckert began a project that would consume 16 years of his life. He combed through centuries of diaries, court depositions, medical texts, prayer manuals, and personal letters. Documents spanning continents and eras. What he found dismantled a fundamental assumption about human biology. References to first sleep and second sleep appeared everywhere. In English, in French, in Italian, in Nigerian oral traditions, in the writings of Homer. The pattern was global, it was ancient, and it had been almost completely erased from modern memory. Humans did not sleep through the night. They slept in 2 phases, separated by a quiet, wakeful interval of 1 to 2 hours in the deep middle of darkness, and no one thought it was strange. What did they do during that gap? They didn't panic, they didn't treat it as insomnia. They moved through it the way you move through breathing, without resistance. Some prayed, some lay quietly beside their families and talked in the dark, conversations with a depth and intimacy that daylight, with all its obligations, rarely permitted. Some couples made love. Medieval physicians actually recommended the period between sleeps as the ideal time for conception, believing the body was most relaxed and receptive. Some simply lay still and thought. But that thinking was different from anything we experience today. In 2001, psychiatrist Thomas Ware at the National Institute of Mental Health designed an experiment that would accidentally open a window into the ancient mind. He placed subjects in conditions of absolute darkness for 14 hours each night, mimicking the long, lightless stretches of a pre-industrial winter. Within weeks, something remarkable happened. Their sleep fragmented, naturally, without distress. 2 distinct phases emerged, separated by a period of calm wakefulness. And during that wakeful gap, their brains entered a state the researchers hadn't anticipated. Elevated prolactin levels, the same neurochemical signature found in deep meditation. The same hormonal territory that unfolds in the moments just before REM sleep, when the boundary between waking thought and dream logic begins to dissolve. These subjects weren't restless, they weren't suffering. They had entered a twilight state of consciousness that modern humans almost never access, a state that our ancestors inhabited every single night for 100,000 years. We eliminated it, and we never noticed it was gone. But to understand what the night truly meant to ancient humans, you have to understand what darkness was. Not the dimness of a bedroom with a streetlight leaking through the blinds, not the soft pulse of a router blinking in the hallway. Real darkness, the kind that erases your hand 6 inches from your face. The kind where sound becomes architecture, where the crack of a branch 100 yards away carries the same weight as a scream. When the sun dropped below the horizon, the world became a different planet. Predators moved differently. Air cooled rapidly. Every rustle became a question. And the only barrier between a sleeping band of humans and everything else breathing in the darkness was fire. Fire didn't just cook food. It didn't just provide warmth. Fire created the first perimeter, the first architecture of safety. A ring of light carved into an ocean of threat, and around that ring, something unprecedented in the history of life on Earth began to happen. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years studying the Jew/Hwanzi Bushmen of the Kalahari, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies still living in conditions close to those of our deep ancestors. She recorded and categorized what they discussed during the day and what they discussed at night by firelight. The contrast was staggering. During the day, resource logistics, complaints, economic disputes, who hunted what, who owed whom, practical, immediate, transactional. At night, stories, myths, journeys of people from distant lands, tales of spirits, tricksters, ancestors, and the invisible forces shaping the world. 81% of nighttime firelight conversation was dedicated to storytelling. The darkness didn't silence the human mind, it liberated it, and this is where the implications become enormous. Language may have evolved to coordinate daytime survival, to point, warn, negotiate, plan. But narrative, the ability to construct entire worlds that don't exist, to simulate futures that haven't arrived, to encode moral frameworks into characters and consequences, narrative may have been born not under the sun, but under the stars, between sleeps, around fires, in a neurochemical state halfway between waking and dreaming that we have since pathologized out of existence. Religion, mythology, law, identity, the entire invisible architecture of meaning that separates a human society from an animal group may have been forged in darkness. The night was not downtime. It was the workshop of consciousness itself. And then we flooded it with light. In 1879, Thomas Edison demonstrated the practical incandescent bulb, and within a single generation, the night began to disappear. First from city streets, then from living rooms, then from bedrooms, then from the inside of the human skull. Today, 99% of people in the United States and Europe live under light-polluted skies. The Milky Way, visible to every human being who ever lived before the 20th century, is now invisible to more than a third of the world's population. We didn't just lose the stars. We lost the state of mind that came with seeing them. Melatonin production has declined across industrialized populations. Sleep disorders have proliferated into an epidemic. The wakeful gap between first and second sleep, once a nightly meditation, a space for intimacy, quiet prayer, and the strange fertile territory where conscious thought dissolves into something older, has been rebranded. We call it insomnia now, and we treat it as a malfunction. So the next time you wake at 3 in the morning and the house is still and the ceiling stares back at you in the half dark and something in your chest insists you should be worried, consider the possibility that nothing is wrong. Consider that your body is remembering something your civilization forgot. For 100,000 years, this hour belonged to you, not to productivity, not to screens, not to the anxious machinery of modern time. It was the hour when the fire had burned low and the stories had ended, and the human animal lay in the immense silence of a world without electricity and simply existed in the dark. It was the hour when we became human, and now it's the hour we medicate away.